Another defeat, guys. Who's actually surprised by this? So far, this is our 4th defeat of the season. Last season, we suffered only 1 defeat. If I had to say, I'm going to guess and say that this is not the last defeat of the season. The way we've been playing. Carlo Ancelotti before the game said that he was going to field his best 11. In his mind, if this is his best 11 players, then we have a bigger problem. Now, if you even look at the XG, you can clearly see that Real Betis, they deserve to win this game. Real Madrid deservedly lost because our ability to create chances in this game was truly abysmal. And that's what makes this clash against Atleti this coming week really concerning for me because we know they're going to sit deep. We know that they're going to deny us a lot of these spaces. And historically, when teams have played like this against Real Madrid, we've struggled. Now, there's a couple things I want to cover in this video. Let's start with Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe didn't have one of his better games today. And it's because of the tooth extraction. You could tell that this is not the typical Kylian. Clearly, he was not at his best. Just like during the Euros, when he broke his nose and he had to play with that mask, we could see that Kylian was no longer as good as he usually is. And with this tooth extraction thing, simply put, Kylian Mbappe that we're used to over the last few games didn't show up today, which is fine. We're all human. There's nothing against that. We're all human beings, and sometimes we have a bad day at the office. But there's circumstances that led to that. But the question is, why is it that Carlo Ancelotti waits until so late in the game to take Kylian off? When you know that he just undergone this small dental procedure that's clearly affecting him mentally and it's affecting his game, and Endrick just scored a winner for us not too long ago in the last match against Girona, then why not make that substitution earlier? Of course, the condition of the pitch did not make things easier for Real Madrid, but that's no excuse. Both teams had to play under those conditions. And when the conditions are that bad, the team that wants it more ends up prevailing. And that's exactly what happened. Betis wanted that win more than Real Madrid wanted it. And they deservedly won that match. Now let's quickly talk about the back line. Because Ferland Mendy was poor in this match. So was Lucas Vázquez, Rodrygo, and of course David Alaba. It's clear that David Alaba is not fit for the big matches. You can disqualify him from any of those knockout games in the Champions League for the rest of the season. Now, are there some encouraging signs from David Alaba coming back? Yes. Can he eventually make a recovery and become a starter again at Real Madrid? Potentially. We'll see. But that's just not happening this season. Especially not when you have a guy like Raul Asencio on the bench who actually has the physical tools to keep up with a lot of these players when they're behind our back line. There was one sequence in particular where David Alaba was really lucky not to get a red card. And look, Lucas Vázquez is not a bad player. He's actually naturally a right midfielder who's been played as a right back. Does he make sense for certain games where you're at home, you have control of the ball with very limited transition opportunities where maybe you have a guy like Fede Valverde covering the spaces behind Lucas Vázquez? Then yeah, absolutely. We're all on board with that. Nobody's saying Lucas Vázquez shouldn't continue at Real Madrid and he's not a good player. But if you're going to play him away from home in a game where Fede is out, Raul Asencio is out, you're playing David Alaba, there's hardly any cover for him, then we have a bigger problem. Now, the game against Real Sociedad, where Raul Asencio did play at right back, it's clear he was not comfortable in that position. A few times he was being pressed when he had the ball. His touches were a little bit off, and he didn't have his best match at right back. Imagine your first game at right back is away against Sociedad, a team that presses so high up the pitch like that. That is not going to be easy for anybody. But the games against City, the other matches where Raul Asencio has started, he has not looked out of place. If anything, he's been our best defender in some of those matches. Now, I know Carlo Ancelotti gets to see these guys day in and day out, and he's at the practice, we're not. But we can see with our own two eyes that Raul Asencio has the tools needed for him to be successful at Real Madrid. From a mentality perspective, from a physicality perspective, I cannot make sense of the fact that in Carlo Ancelotti's mind, David Alaba is his preferred center back, and if he's not healthy and fit, then it's Tchouaméni over Raul Asencio, who when given the opportunity, he has seized that opportunity. Now, speaking of people who have not taken their opportunity, Ferland Mendy as well. Ferland has had a few games where he's played well, but overall, his form this season hasn't been the best. But last season, he was spectacular. Talk about a lack of rotation. Antonio Rudiger today looked slow and heavy. Of course, he has Ramadan, and he just overall looks like a player that's fatigued. So again, Carlo Ancelotti, if some of these players are not playing at their best level and they're being played week in and week out, then maybe you incorporate a little bit more rotation. Fran Garcia comes in very late in the game. You could have used him earlier. Now, one of the things I want to close on, a couple of the last things, the first being Luka Modric. Luka Modric, he has enough to continue at Real Madrid, get another contract extension, stay for another season. We've seen enough to say that Luka Modric has what it takes to continue to play at this level. However, games like this where you're going to start him, where you don't have a guy like Jude in the midfield to provide more defensive cover, games like this where you are away from home in a very physical game with a lot of transitions, does it make the most sense in the world to start Luka Modric in a game like this and play him for that many minutes? Is he being utilized and deployed in the right way? The resurrection of Real Madrid coincided with the resurrection of Dani Ceballos. I don't know who else really plays that role at Real Madrid, but maybe you try Arda. Maybe you try other solutions, because Luka Modric, as a player coming in when the game is more open, the last 15-20 minutes, with his magic, he can do a lot of things. But in a game like this, where you're away from home and you're expecting him to play the 90 minutes and keep up with some of these players at their physical prime, again, very poor strategy by Carlo Ancelotti. Now, the last thing I want to close on is Vinicius and Rodrygo. Now, there's no question that Vinicius is one of the best players in the world, if not the best or second best player in the world, no question. But at times, his lack of efficiency is a bit of a problem. And when you have a guy like Rodrygo who plays off the left flank, where he's more comfortable, the team is more efficient at times. Vinicius can create more moments of magic, and he's more of a game-winning player. But there's times where he's being fed the ball and he's highly inefficient with it, to the detriment of the team. And one of the things that's also hurting Vinicius is not having a conventional 9 in the team or a player in the box to attack some of those crosses he's putting in there. Vinicius was playing at his best when he had Benzema or Jude Bellingham really high up the pitch, assisting him in those moments where he's getting the ball, drawing defenders, and then feeding it to those players. It just looks like a team completely out of balance. Now, with this big clash against Atleti coming up this week, Carlo Ancelotti needs to figure out these solutions, because the first game is at the Bernabeu. And we know that traveling to the Metropolitano has been difficult for Carlo Ancelotti since he's come to Real Madrid. I'm working on a video this weekend breaking down the tactical solutions Carlo Ancelotti needs to employ to win that match, so make sure you guys stay tuned to that. But I'll just close by saying that one of my concerns with Carlo Ancelotti, whether he wins the Champions League, wins the league, or goes on to do miraculous things this season, is that when you're at the helm somewhere for so long and you have your trusted guys, and you have guys that you've relied on for so long who've bailed you out in so many different instances, you rely so heavily on those guys and you stop coming up with new fresh ideas. And it just feels like Carlo Ancelotti has taken this team as far as he can. I hope when we look back in many years from now, we'll look at Carlo Ancelotti as one of the greatest managers who's transitioned this team from the old guard to the new guard. But regardless of what he does for the rest of the season, I just don't think he's the right guy going forward, because the margin of error for Real Madrid is so small. Even when we're winning games, it's late winners, it's by a small margin. Because think about the games that we've dropped points to this season. A lot of them have been very marginal situations where Real Madrid could have either drawn the game, won it, very close calls. And when you have this squad of players, these players, then you simply just have to do better. And I think a better manager does do better with this team. Thank you for watching. Hala Madrid.